The cost of intelligence is asymptotically going to go to zero. 40% of all engineers graduating this year worldwide are in China. So if you want to improve the battery systems, if you want to build the next cardiac defibrillators that are embedded inside, how are you going to do that? You need scientists.
For the first time in history, machines may be learning faster than humans. Meet Bilal Zuberi. He has backed over 70 companies shaping our physical world.
I was there in that room when Stripe presented the Series B. There was no deck. And I refused to accept that you have to be an asshole to be a good investor or to be a good founder.
This happened to the rest of us, all of us.
Some VCs are starting to get seen as a bank. What is the actual problem you're trying to solve?
Get to revenue. Be in control of your own destiny.
You have to believe before others even understand.
Hello and welcome, Bilal. So excited to have you on this show. Congratulations on starting Red Glass.
Thank you. So happy to be seeing you again.
Before we get into Red Glass, I would just love our listeners to get to know you a little bit more. You have a compelling story. PhD from MIT under a Nobel laureate. That's not easy. From there into your own startup, General Catalyst, Lux, and now launching Red Glass. Give us a quick walkthrough of your background.
Nothing is easy in life for anybody. So I don't think my life or my experiences were any more difficult than anybody else's. I came to this country as an immigrant, like many founders do. Did my undergrad, did my PhD, fortunate to work under an incredible mind called Mario Molina, who got the Nobel Prize in 1995. I thought I was becoming an academic. That's the path that I was on. And then I realized somewhere along my PhD work that I wanted to make a difference in the world. So I decided that I want to build products and I want to bring it to market. And that, being at MIT, I learned, hey, that's what they call entrepreneurship. And that's what they call becoming a founder. So without quite realizing that, I became a founder. And I ended up starting a company that we raised money for 4.5 years. The core technology of it was acquired by if it had applications in automotive sciences and in medical technologies, was an advanced materials platform. So the core automotive side was acquired by Corning Incorporated, biomedical device company, was spun out as a separate company. And then a fund that had wanted to invest in me called General Catalyst that wanted to invest in that company, but we were ending up selling the company. They asked me to join them, and I joined them as a principal. These were relatively early days at GC, and I helped start their deep tech practice. Hemant Taneja, who's now the CEO there, he and I worked closely together, and we worked closely together since then, on investing in technologies that were deeply rooted in sciences and engineering. From there, we opened up an office on the West Coast. We were all in Boston up until that time. And I was moving out to the West Coast when Lux Capital reached out and asked me to join them. And that was a smaller fund, but incredible group of people. And I ended up joining them as a partner. And I left after 11 years as a GP there just earlier this year. When I joined them, there was 200 million under management. And we grew it to over 5 billion. I invested in like 60, 70 companies. Took a bunch of companies public, a couple of decacorns, unicorns, all that good stuff. Exciting times. And now I'm a founder again, back to taking the trash out yourself and doing all the work. So it's exciting all over again. But this time I'm founding a VC firm, so it's a little bit different.
Love it. I mean, you were way ahead of your time, doing deep tech, the physical world in late 90s, early 2000s, way, way, way ahead of your time. So you've had such a long and front row seat to the evolution of that world. I really want to get into that. But before I do that, I just love that name. I can guess where that name comes from, but tell us more.
My firm is called Red Glass Ventures, inspired by these glasses. The reality is that I tried my best not to have the firm be named after anything to do with me. I mean, we're not in 1960s or 70s, that you name the firms after yourself. And I tried to look for all these inspiring names, Integrity Partners and God knows what, and they were all taken. Every hill and valley and stream and mountain and tree was taken by some venture firm or private equity firm. And my children kept telling me that I should call it Red Glass. Red is passion and courage. Red is also the color of good luck in a lot of Asian cultures. Glass is transparency and clarity. And from day one, if there's one thing that people have heard me talk about, is the idea of having authentic relationships and honesty and transparency in your relationship. So that really resonated. Glass is also, by the way, formed by putting it in fire, right? And that's what founders go through, right? So when we're looking for this diamond in the rough, I mean, in some ways what we're saying is, go through fire of things not working out and working long hours and not knowing if you're going to get your next paycheck and all that stress that comes with it. And out the other side comes this beautiful material and beautiful object. So I thought the etymology really worked. And frankly, it's working. Red Glass, you will not forget Red Glass Ventures.
Love it, love it. You know, Bilal, I read your posts and your tweets. You're obviously a very, very smart investor. You know probably the most about this world of physical AI investing. But what I love the most is that you are not afraid to show your heart and your warmth. And in our business, I think that is just so important. We partner with founders for a long period of time. They need to get to know who the person is that's sitting across the table. And it's more than the intellect, it's the whole person.
I was talking to somebody yesterday at a get together, and I said, first thing to remember is that we're all carrying a lot of monkeys on our back. Nobody's life is easy. We used to have an LP, billionaire, beautiful house, traveling around the world, but nobody else knew that one of his children had committed suicide, and the other one was, substance abuse problem, right? So inside his heart, he was hurting, even though the outside, everybody was like, I want his life. And there's so many stories like that. And I'm sure I'm carrying monkeys on my back, things that are difficult. My father and my parents that I left behind 30 years ago, and frankly, lived away from them for most of my life. That's a sacrifice I made. That's a sacrifice a lot of people make. And, to be honest, people make a lot bigger sacrifices to just survive, let alone find ways to thrive. There are 4 core values as I'm building this new firm. And those 4 values are curiosity, intensity, integrity, and humility. Curiosity, because the world around us is changing so much. When I came to this country, it used to cost $5 a minute to call home on scratch cards, calling cards, right? So you used to call like a few minutes a month to talk to your parents, because it used to pay me $4.60 to clean toilets and wash, dishes to be able to make that money. And today, fast forward 30 years, you and I are having this digital conversation online without effectively paying anything for it, right? We're having a video conversation for free, and you might as well be sitting in the other, completely opposite side of the world. Just fascinating what the world of technology is doing, and obviously AI and all that. Intensity, because this is the greatest show on earth that's happening right there in front of us, and we have the front row seats to it. Like, what else could I be doing that could be more important than to be a part of this changing the world, curing cancer, and hopefully working on climate change and preventing that from happening, and water availability and mobility and, and in human efficiency. Those 2 things combined make you a good investor. Integrity, which is what do you do when nobody's watching? What is inside your heart? And humility, understanding that you're just a cog in the wheel, the little speck of dust in the skies. That makes you a good human. And I think for us to be able to truly harness the power of AI in ways in which they will affect everybody's lives, my lives, your lives, the healthcare we get, the insurance we get, frankly, where we drop bombs, we need to also be good humans. And I refuse to accept that you have to be an asshole to be a good investor or to be a good founder. I think good people can be that. And I would like to back those good people to then change the world using technology for something good. So if I'm in the business of finding amazing founders, having them reach out to me, having them refer to me, and having an authentic conversation around how are we going to have this partnership over the next 10, 12 years to go build this company, I need to be showing the human that I am. And I need to be approachable so that people tell me, hey, this is the problem that I see happening. I may not have recognized this, but you may have recognized it. And let's go build an amazing company around it.
So true. And you know what you said about humility and integrity, this has become now so key in the world of the power of AI. Like any powerful technology, it has good use, it has bad use, right? And both will happen. And how much of it is to the good of humanity depends on the founders and the folks around the founders who are building these solutions and the decisions they make at every step. That human partnership, that trust, the humility, the integrity, that is just so key in the decisions we'll all make. Which brings me to the next questions, which is, what is exciting you? Not everyone's aware of this, the power of AI in the physical world. So for our listeners, just tease that apart. What does it mean?
Now, where we're headed towards is what I call physical AI, actually. I call it AI in the physical world. Jensen Huang and NVIDIA in January called it physical AI, which is embedded AI, which is in physical objects around us, whether it's a, it's a machine, it's a robot, it's a autonomous car, the embedded environment in which we have things around us. What if intelligence is embedded inside? And that's where I'm investing, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But let me say something that actually comes before that. So we talked about how, 30 years ago, the power of the internet allowed us to have this communication with each other effectively for free. What happened? What is that? It is that the cost of communication asymptotically went to zero. Okay? And what that meant was that a lot of industries that relied on communication barriers, they effectively got commoditized and then developed tremendously in a different way. Right? News. It used to be a bunch of people sitting in a room, writing a newspaper, putting it on paper, printing press, publishing it, the guy coming and throwing it into your door. There's a lot of barriers in that, right? And that changed. You can write, if you get a piece of news, your relative is getting married, you can publish it, and within seconds on WhatsApp, the entire world knows that, somebody's sister is getting married. That led to changes in communication. We don't write letters anymore. We just send emails to our parents or whoever, right? It changed how we access news. It changed how we do commerce. It changed how we get entertainment. And all that industry, it's created trillions of dollars of economy for the internet. What is happening now with the AI, the most high-level way to think about this, rather than getting lost in the infrastructure and compute and LLMs and all that stuff, is that the cost of intelligence is asymptotically going to go to zero. Okay, we think we're intelligent beings. I think, therefore I am. That has been reserved to human beings for the longest period of time. That, I think, is going to get automated and mechanized and built into machines. And that's going to create, just like the cost of communication going to zero, tremendous push for the economy. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to accelerate our GDP growth. Not that that's the only thing to care about, but it's going to allow us to solve problems that we couldn't before. We don't have enough doctors in this country. We certainly don't have enough material scientists. I was a chemistry undergrad, physical chemistry graduate student. When was the last time you met a young person coming out of high school who says, I want to do a major in chemistry and I want to be a chemist? It's a dying breed, right? But have we solved all chemistry problems in the world? Hell no, right? But we don't have enough chemists. 40% of all engineers graduating this year worldwide are in China. Right? So if you want to improve the battery system so your cars can run for 1,000 miles instead of 250 or 300, and they cost, $25K instead of $100K to have that. If you want to build the next cardiac, defibrillator, that are embedded inside you, if you want to solve, artificial tissue that's regenerated, so skin replacements or organ replacements, and I can go on and on. How are you going to do that? You need scientists to do that. And the point is that we are going to get to a place where we will do the smart, intelligent stuff on top. Humans are going to be in the loop, hopefully always. But the point is that a lot of tasks we do on a daily basis, download this paper, read this paper, analyze this paper, figure out the experimental methodology, see how you do that, learn from it. A lot of faculty time is spent reading papers, right? Of what is being published around the world, what new things are being done, and how are people approaching problems. All of that's going to get mechanized. All of that's going to be done in machines, and that's going to really accelerate. That's the real power. Now, how does all this connect to the world where I'm spending most of my time, which is a lot of people in venture and startups are right now taking what we built over the last 10 years as SaaS solutions, things that are like search and customer service and legal and all of that. And they're basically saying, how can we use AI to automate those functions? And there's a lot of economic opportunity there. So it's like traditional enterprise software that's being, AI-ified. Let's put it that way. Great. I think it's going to be an amazing opportunity, and we will see amazing companies come out of that. But I think the other thing that's happening is AI is pervading every single aspect of our life and every single aspect of our GDP and economy. Vast swaths of our economy are run by things like industrialization, manufacturing, automotive, construction, healthcare, defense tech, right? And we're in a global competition, and we've frankly been struggling to keep up. Right? We've lost our, solar cell manufacturing capacity, semiconductor manufacturing capacity. We have significant issues. We don't manufacture things anymore. How are we going to bring all that back? How are we going to create the next generation of these systems? We're going to do that with the help of AI. And I think this is the promise, that AI can now enable all these companies that previously were not able to do that, to build amazing companies. The last part of this is 10 years ago, if you wanted to solve something in automotive industry, you like your father grew up in Michigan and you like really care about American, independence in automotive, you had to build a car company. And in fact, every major VC firm 8 to 10 years ago had either an automotive or a truck company in its portfolio. The founders of that largely came from the automotive industry, learning new tools and tricks to be able to do that. You're a doctor and you say, I've done a little bit of technology. Let me start building a medical device company, right? Today, that is going to change because now young kids, my children, your children, who want to go do software engineering, they work at OpenAI, DeepMind, Palantir, Samsara, Flock Safety, Applied Intuition, all these software companies, Silicon Valley-esque companies, they can be inspired to solve problems in the real world because you no longer have to be sourcing doors and panels in China to be able to build the next car, but you can take these magical tool sets that you've got around AI and software, and you can use that to influence important problems in the world. You can use that to create ways of diagnosing cancer using radiation scans, or to build autonomous systems for driving or elderly care or home robots. That, I think, is amazing. So you combine this incredible technology and this innovative mindset that's usually been building video games or whatnot, and now you can solve really interesting problems, and that's a real bonus for society. And I want to invest at that intersection.
That's a fantastic segue to my next question. You want to attract that next founder that may not have grown up in the automotive industry, that has bright insight, working at OpenAI or one of your companies, Applied Intuition, that you said they understand the power of AI. They can look at a physical world problem, such as automotive. They don't have to be an automotive expert, but they can solve a problem, right? That's the power of the tools of AI. Those are the founders you want to back. Tell us about your fund, your new fund. So we talked about the name, what is the fund? How big is it? What kind of checks will you write? Your stage of investing?
It's Red Glass Ventures based in Silicon Valley. Will be investing mandate is global, even though mostly, would probably be in the US. I'm still waiting for my final close to happen. So I'm still under SEC mandated, limitations and restraints. It's going to be $125 to $150 million fund, investing in formation stage, literally from incubation stage or an EIR stage to pre-seed, seed, and Series A. Think of it as the first institutional capital into these firms. The more important question is, why should a new fund exist in the first place? I mean, there's thousands of funds. I mean, does the world really need a new fund? Today, we have the venture industry that has bifurcated itself into this bimodal distribution. On one side, you have small pre-seed seed funds that are like 20, 30, $50 million. Incredible people. I have an LP in some of them. What they're primarily doing is buying optionality. Or what I say is buying lottery tickets, right? Like they're basically saying, hey, Nilanjana is starting a company. She's raising $3 million. Many of them will reach out and say, can I put 100, 200K, 500K into your company and I'll be a part of your journey and I'll help you wherever I can. But, they're investing in crypto and software and consumers and gaming. So it's really about finding you early and giving you money after the first hour of a meeting. And there's a lot of value in that. And I'm simplifying what they do. On the other hand, if you're building a company, like I said, in these complex sectors where you're saying, I'm building software for the automotive industry and majority of my customers are outside the US and they have their own regulations and constraints. If you're building an autonomous technology company, or if you're building a medical device company that's going to have customers in Korea, or, I need help in building this. Like I haven't done this before as a founder. I don't know how to hire the right people. I mean, I know what kind of people I want, but how do you recruit them? How do you pay them? How do you create the right go-to-market strategy and all of that? You need help. So you go to traditional VC firms. And those traditional VC firms are all the names that we recognize, Excel and Index and Anderson Horowitz and Founders Fund, GC, Sequoia, Kleiner, and all that stuff. The successes of these funds over the last 10 years allowed them to raise substantially larger funds. That these are now, each fund is like billion, $2 billion, $5 billion funds. Right? Like when I joined General Catalyst, the fund size was like $500 million. General Catalyst now raises $5 to $8 billion every cycle. Lux Capital, the entire AUM was $200 million, right? Like now Lux Capital raises $1.5 billion every 3 years or so. So what happens is, if you are a senior partner at one of these firms, and there were only like 4 GPs and 2 founding partners, and you have to deploy $1.5 billion every 3 years, it's simply mathematically impossible for that senior partner to put time and effort into a company where they've put 2 million, 5 million to work. You just can't. Your time is very precious. And you end up spending time where you've put a lot more money in, where you've written 25, 50, $100 million checks. So it's no surprise to us as the fund sizes have grown. We've become more accustomed to reading in the news. This company raised $100 million. This company raised $200 million. Just in the first 10 days of October, 100 companies raised money over, $100 million, right? I mean, it's crazy. In that, I wanted to create a new fund that's focused on early stage investing where the partners actually, every company matters. There's no optionality in that sense. And every company gets the time and attention of the entire partnership. If I buy 10 or 20% into your company, I'm like a co-founder to you. My fund is like a co-founder to you. We roll up our sleeves and help you in every which way. We never call ourselves co-founders. Like, I do not believe in that VCs doing that. But we will play the role that we have to earn our keep. The price of the money that we paid is the entry price, and we have to prove to you that we are valuable partners to you. Otherwise, the flywheel doesn't work. There's nobody you're referring back to us after that. And that, I think, is going to allow VCs to be more helpful, be more active, be more engaged, use our network, use our political capital we've built, all of the above, intensely in the service of every entrepreneur. Not only the founders that have become successful. Trust me, if I was an investor in Coinbase or Stripe or whatever, right? Like, I'm an investor in Applied Intuition, it's a $15 billion company. Absolutely. When he calls, I pick up the phone and do whatever he wants me to do because it's going to return $2 billion back to our fund. Right? But how do you do that for somebody that is just getting started, that has just raised $5 million and is trying to hire their first director of marketing, and they want you to interview the 3 candidates? I can tell you that most large funds and senior VCs at those funds would be like, dude, seriously, like, go talk to my marketing person I've hired on my platform. They'll do that for you. And here I will be the one doing that because that's what you bargain. That's what they wanted and expected from you. And I think that is what needs to change in venture.
100%. That very thoughtful, focused early stage investing is key to sowing the right seeds that become the future giant trees, right? And for that, you need thoughtful investors that are, most aligned with the founders and actually helpful. I 100% agree with you. You're in the physical AI world, so transformation of physical industries, which, by the way, is an area we started investing in 2018. We're not 100% focused like you, but at least a third of each of our funds go into the transformation of physical industries. The way I see it, the power of AI is the biggest in the most rustic industries, right? Because the order of magnitude of transformation there is so much bigger that the return on capital there is going to be so much bigger than the incremental gains in the digital world. That's a vast market, right? You have construction, you have oil and gas, you have automotive, you have vast amounts of industries. Is the fund focused on a particular couple of areas and all of it? Just tease that apart a little bit. Where are you focusing your time?
So this is a question that I've been asked for 16 years of investing. Where are you focused? I'm focused where the founders are focused. And I'm not being glib about it. If I had done the, Bilal Zuberi, the analyst, napkin approach, these are the sectors that are going to grow over the next 5 years. And I'm, actually famously Bill Joy at Kleiner Perkins did that. I'd probably be out of business right now. We were all investing 2008. Clean tech was the big thing, right? Before that, it was nanotech. Before that, it was biotech. Then came crypto and now it's deep tech, right? Like, it's building defense companies or whatnot. I mean, these cycles come and go. I mean, they're funds that got created in the last 10 years. They're like space-focused funds that are just automotive-focused funds. And my thing is, it doesn't matter what I want to focus on. What really matters is where the founder is seeing the opportunity, right? These founders are not just some, they're not just some people who take risks. These are people that have deep insights into industries and transformations that are happening. Mike Maples has written a very interesting book called Pattern Breakers that came out maybe a year ago. And then Mike Maples talks very interestingly about, who are these people that see inflection in society. Something is happening, usually technologically, sometimes it's politically, but something is happening that's going to lead to completely new ways of solving problems. An example he gives is like the availability of GPS on the iPhone 4. All of us looked at it, oh yeah, great, we have GPS now. But some founders of Lyft and Uber looked at it and said, if you have a GPS, we know exactly where you are at any given time. If I have a GPS, I know exactly where I am at any given time. Hey, I can connect the two of us, and voila, you can start creating transportation. You can do Uber, Lyft, but then you can also do DoorDash, Instacart, and all that good stuff, right? And it completely changed the world in many ways how we think about mobility. So that's what I look for in terms of spaces. Um, okay, that said, so now back up a little bit. You know, what is happening in the physical world? Number one, people vastly underestimate the size of these markets. The entire software industry globally is about $4 trillion. Just the automotive industry is a $4 trillion market. Right? Now, you drive a car, you've probably driven a car most of your life. I drive cars, and can you name me one software focused company in the automotive industry? It's going to be
Blind intuition.
well, okay. Yes, absolutely. Look, here's the problem. The largest company in applied intuition, the largest company that was doing software revenues at that time was a company called Bosch. Mm-hmm. And you don't think of Bosch as a software company, right? Yep. So this is a ginormous industry. There is software we all use all the time. You sit in a car, you turn the car on, and a whole bunch of software comes on, and screens come on, and buttons press, and music, and connect to Spotify, and all that stuff, right? And there's literally, in my opinion, relatively compared to what we're used to in Silicon Valley built products, like relatively not very good companies building software for the automotive companies. And yet few founders in the past would venture into that space. And I think that's changing, and it's going to lead to amazing opportunities. In traditional tech, when you're selling to customers, your customers are like a LinkedIn, Airbnb, Dropbox, JP Morgan, whatever. These companies are like 70-80% gross margin businesses themselves. They spit out a lot of cash flow. Because of that, they're able to hire really incredible technical teams inside who test and debate about every product very quickly. They're very in the tech know-how, which means that when you have a new product to sell to them, they can quickly test it, run a POC, they can buy it. Sales cycles are, 2 weeks to maybe 3 months. And because they can evaluate technologies very well. However, if it's a very important product, they're constantly also doing a build versus buy decision. Airbnb says, should we build this ourselves? Should we buy it from the outside, right? And they're constantly switching out to, there's better technology out there. Let's go use that. So you have churn. Now compare that to industries like if you're selling to Toyota or GM, or if you're selling to Honeywell or Rockwell, or if you're selling to Porsche, or if you're selling to, manufacturing companies in Germany, if you're selling to industrial houses in Japan. These companies are usually 30 to 50% gross margin businesses. They're not spitting out very high amounts of cash. That means they're not able to attract the world's best AI engineers and software engineers internally. They cannot build these products themselves. They see the same world we all do. Okay? They have iPhones too. They also download apps, and they see that, oh my God, the face changed, and I can do automation of my workflow, my calendaring, and whatnot. But in their actual work day to day, they're unable to build products to do that. And so they have to buy these products from the outside. And once they buy the products from the outside, and they usually buy something that they can replace easily, so it doesn't change their workflow. But if you build trust and you have the ability to penetrate this organization, your net recurring revenue and new recurring revenue within these organizations grows dramatically. So the opportunity set becomes very, very large, even within just a few logos. That, I think, is where founders are starting to focus on, whether it's, tractors and construction jobs or whatnot. It's saying, let's automate the functions that are very hard to do. Then we give them new capabilities that they haven't had before. And then we entirely change the workflow. So you do things in a completely different way going forward.
I think particularly in that world, I think the contrast that you painted between selling to the digital world, the Airbnbs of the world, and selling to the Toyotas of the world, they are completely different animals, right? So I think it is vitally important for these founders to have investors that really understand that customer, the life cycle, the sales cycles, because there's a huge mismatch between selling SaaS to an enterprise and selling robotics to BMW. And I think that can lead to potentially overcapitalization, focus on the wrong metrics, mismatch in expectation of when revenue is going to hit. So just talk me through that a little bit. We also see this, right? I mean, your BMW sales cycle could be 3 years before a full rollout, right? So how do you think about the capitalization of these companies? What should be the expectations? What should be the founder qualities right? Let's say you have a founder coming out of OpenAI, wants to, go disrupt the automotive industry. Is it, they're both can succeed from what you're saying, right? I sell parts or enabling technologies to the existing incumbents, or I'm just going to disrupt them. I'm just going to build my own cars, like Tesla, right? So both are existing. Do you have a viewpoint on how each of these companies should be built, how they should be capitalized, what should be the expectation?
I was saying earlier that VCs need to become real partners. You're not just a capital provider. So this idea that some VCs are starting to get seen as a bank, you go to them for any kind of financing, you effectively submit a paperwork and you get money, and then good luck and you get some swag. That is maybe beneficial in later stages, but in the early stages, when you're setting up your company, you're looking for a real partner. And that advice is exactly this. What is my business strategy? Like, what am I really trying to solve? Identifying the problem you're trying to solve. Like, what is the thing that I'm going to be known for if I'm successful 5 years from now? Like, I see a lot of businesses these days, scale AI for robotics, like 100 versions of that. Do you really want to be scale AI for robotics? Or you're saying that because scale AI is successful in the year 2025, but in 2030, who's going to give a damn about scale AI? Like, nobody today talks about I'm the Facebook for whatever, right? But in 2010, everybody used to talk about I'm the Facebook for whatever, right? And so that's not a problem. What is the actual problem you're trying to solve? So those conversations, how to recruit the right people, what is the right initial product insertion point? Like, you got this big idea, but what do you really build first? Applied Intuition build the simulation tools. They didn't say, I'm going to build the entire autonomous car for you. Today they can, but they're now $15 billion worth company, right? So what's your insertion point? What is your right go-to-market for the kind of customers that you're talking to? You can get lost in the innovation teams at a BMW or a Rockwell forever and never get a real revenue, or Defense Department, right? Or Department of War now. So how do you find your way through that? I don't anticipate a young person who's never built before to have the inside knowledge. They will learn much faster than I will, but you can guide them, look around the corners for them, introduce them to the right people where they can get on that very fast learning curve, and hopefully soon know even more than you. And then it is this idea of what's the right market, what's the right cap structure and the right capitalization strategy for you. How much do you need to raise? Like, I was talking to a founding team just this weekend, actually yesterday, and they were like, we're building this complex technology, so hence we need to raise $10 million to be able to get to technology and product. And I guided them to understand, guys, there's no way you're going to be able to build a product that your customer will actually buy within $10 million. You have two options. Either you say, I'm going to raise way more than that, like 30, 40, 50 million, so I will for sure be able to get there, and if I don't get there, then I'm dead. Or you raise much less. And you raise much less because you don't promise them that I'll get to the end product. You tell them that I will start moving in the right direction. I'll start building a team. I'll start putting some prototypes, maybe simulation tools in place. And then I will raise more money. So instead of $10 million, I'll raise 5 million and then 20 million. And only then I'll get to product. So you create momentum in the company. But that's a capital structure strategy that you have to think through. Look, in founders, there are two kinds of founders, at least. One is the visionary types. The other one is the execution type, right? Visionary guys have to execute a little bit, but primarily led by vision. And the execution guys better have some kind of a vision, but they're really execution guys. In the visionary camp, I'll put people like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. I mean, they're a little bit crazy. They envision a world that you and I sometimes find it hard to believe, even though we live in the world of technology, let alone an ordinary person. I mean, if you go to San Francisco, there are autonomous taxis everywhere. The Waymos are everywhere. And there's no driver, right? And it's madness that is cars running around that don't have a driver in them. But somebody at some point envisioned, that sitting at Google, and before that, obviously, in other places, that, we need this to exist. Or the phone without any buttons on it, right? That was somebody's imagination. So those guys, they have to convince the world that a better world can exist. And here's what it looks like. That may look like living on Mars or whatever that might be. And then they have to convince the world to give them the resources to get there. So in some ways, they have to be like prophets, right? And that's why you think of them that way, right? Like, I mean, whether you love him or hate him, Elon Musk is a little bit like that kind of a guy, crazy ideas, and then somehow makes it happen. And so for those kinds of founders, the mere mortals that I meet, and I see that these are like the visionary founders, you have to make sure that the right resourcing, the right messaging, and all of that is ready, because they're on a long journey. And they have to convince people. They have to have the ability to sell to people. The other kind of founders are the likes of Alex Karp at Palantir, or Kessler Yunus at Applied Intuition, or or Alex Wang at Scale AI. And these guys, they don't have to paint the vision of like a world that everybody knew that cars are going to become more electronic, digital, more autonomous. That wasn't their vision. Okay. The data is important, and the data analysis and understanding data and connectivity between fields and ontologies, that everybody knew, right? But these guys implemented it. These guys were like, this is a meat grinder, and I'm gonna go into it and I'm gonna execute the hell out of it. And you can blame me with calling me, oh, you're just a forward deployed engineer, you're just a services company, or you're just a software services company. We will then build products around it or whatever. But the reality is that we're going to make it work. And they've all built amazing. I mean, Palantir, again, regardless of what you think of it, like a $300 billion plus company. So you have to know what kind of founder you're dealing with, what kind of industries they're going into. If you take a visionary, prophetic guy and put them into an industry which needs to be an execution machine, they're going to be churned out and spit out by the system. Vice versa, if you take a very engineering-oriented founder who's like, I'm a great execution, I know exactly how to sell, and BMW sales cycles, blah, blah, blah. But they're trying to build something that they have to inspire people that, hey, what the world needs is a bipedal humanoid robot that needs to do whatever, and the world questions, do we really need that? No matter what they say about the engineering of that, it doesn't matter. You have to convince the world that it needs to exist. And I think knowing the founder, making the right founder market fit is the most important thing that sort of pre-seed seed investors do. And then once you identify it and made sure that that makes sense, you go in, then you can start giving them superpowers, which is introducing them to the right people, introducing them to the right markets, introducing them to the right opportunities, so that they can then take off.
So let me just summarize what I heard from you. In terms of, again, we're just talking about disruption of AI in the physical world. You're not I know I'm going to invest in this market and I have a thesis investor. Your answer is the founders tell me where I should focus. 100% agree with that. Like, I could not agree more. They know the answers and our job is to back them. So that's one. You let the founders guide you to the right industry and the right problem, right? Number two, both models can succeed, which is, I'm going to disrupt the automotive. I'm going to build a car myself, which is Elon Musk's Tesla. Or I'm going to build what the automotive industry really needs to compete in the AI world, and they're going to buy from me, right? Okay. So both can succeed. And you'll back both types of founders.
Totally.
Visionary, just break glass, build my own car, or the Palantir execution machine, right? So walk me through, let's say you walk into a coffee shop, you're meeting a founder. What is that first 10, 15 minutes? Do you know in the first 10 minutes? Is it take you an hour? Does it take you 3 meetings? Give me some examples.
The no's are easy. The yeses are hard. No's we do 10, 20 times a day. It's the yeses. And I think the important thing is you have to believe. At Lux, we used to say you have to believe before others even understand, right? So as much as you can, do analysis or hopefully avoid analysis paralysis, but, you should do your work, you should do your diligence, you should trust your, instincts, but also test your hypotheses and all that stuff. The most important thing is, do you believe? Do you believe the person? Do you believe the opportunity, the industry? And can you be helpful? When I meet a founder, there are few things that I look for, you could say the first 10 minutes. I don't care if it takes an hour. I don't care if it's 2 meetings. I look for the most important thing is, do they understand the enormity of what they want to build? If they're not building something important, why are they doing it? Look, starting any business is hard. So if you're going to do something hard, from a venture capital perspective, you should be doing something that scales, that's very big, that's going to have a huge impact. So that's number one. Do they understand the enormity of what they're building? Or are they playing the startup game, which is like, I left this company, people expect me to start a company, so maybe I should start a company. I made a little bit of money, so, I can survive without pay for another year or two, so why not? I can see through that pretty quickly. How do you do that? Because you obsess about the problem. You obsess about the problem, and when you obsess about a problem, you obsess about the customers. I want to invest in founders that can't stop thinking about their customer base. Who will that be? Segmenting them, reaching out to them, understanding them. Like, it is music to my ears when I meet a founder that says, before I even decided to start this company, I spoke to about 80 customers. I'm like, holy shit. Okay. So you're not just telling me what you woke up one morning and you felt like I need an alarm clock that does this and then I went and build it. You actually went and talked to your customers to say, what is it that you need? Why do you need it? How do you need it? What will you pay for it? How would you buy it? What is available in the marketplace? Where is the technology trends going? And why can't others get to it? If you're successful, is it easy enough for everybody else to copy you so you're going to have tons of competition? Is there capital available for what you're doing? Will you have the margins that are available to be able to make it into a venture capital business? So all of that, customer obsession is important. For Red Glass being in relatively smaller fund and an early stage fund, I also want founders that are able to quickly iterate their ways into revenues and margins. Because once you do revenues and margins, you start to get more control of the business rather than be dependent on the externalities. Now, some deep tech companies, and they need to exist, like if you're building the next quantum chemistry company or a nuclear fusion company, they require billions of dollars before you have the first dime of revenue. I don't invest in that. I don't invest in that because you could be raising a Series C or D, $1 billion raise, but you don't have any revenue to show for it. So you're very reliant on the external fundraising capabilities. Frankly, a vast majority of biotech companies fall into that, right? Like the markets are hot. Everybody's raising a lot of money. Today, markets are not treating that really well. So you could be a very important, very interesting biotech company, but you can't raise a Series B. Right? And I don't want to invest in companies where I have a higher likelihood of that happening. Now, sometimes I can get caught into that, but I want a situation where the founders gets the energy out of the system because they're able to see customers. They build products. Products are things that customers buy. When customers buy, they give you real revenues, and revenues are real revenues if they generate gross profit on the other side. Right? And then you can start working on increasing the revenues and hence the gross profits, reducing the costs and hence net profits, and you have a profitable company, and voila. That's the point of a business. Sell something that people want and make money while doing it. That's the kind of founder DNA that I look for, and I think it's easy to get. Now, where I think a lot of founders and a lot of VCs, founders get caught up in trying to sell something that they think the VCs want to buy. They like try to talk about a large market, TAM. They start using bullshit things that they think VCs would like to see in a business plan or in a deck. And they don't really get it. Remember, Stripe presented to Lux Capital, and I was there in that room when Stripe presented the Series B. There was no deck. There was a young kid swirling around on a chair talking about how the industry works, right? He didn't care about metrics, but he cared about why the industry is in a problem statement. Engineers are building products. Engineers want to implement, payment solutions, and payment solutions are broken. And that led to now GC will return billions and billions of dollars back to their funds on that investment. It wasn't a deck that sold us, right? So founders end up in that unfortunate situation, and VCs the same way. VCs start believing their own bullshit. The VCs start believing, yeah, this founder's not seeing it, but I see right through this. Like, I can take it there. The founder's not quite getting it right. He's talking about this stuff. But if I get onto his board and with my help and my network, I can point him in the right direction. The thing is, dude, you're not betting on yourself. You're betting on this person. Like, understand your job. And this is where the humility comes in, right? The God complex that VCs end up with is, everybody wants your attention, everybody wants your money. If you start believing your own bullshit, you have to become impassionate about this. And you have to say, what are the metrics that I look for? And does this founder meet those metrics? Am I willing to make exceptions? And if yes, why? What are the things that will allow this to become a big company? And what are the risks inherent in that business? Write it out. And no, and my memos always have the first line on top is TLDR. Why really are we investing in this business? Yeah, all this drama, market size, technology, whatever, all that is there. There's all diligence done, calls done, all that stuff. But really, at the end of the day, there's usually one or two lines that describe why really you want to invest in this business. And you have to be honest with yourself to do that.
100% on that VC with their own thesis. It's also painful to have them around the board, right? Like, dude, I stopped talking. I didn't invest in you. I invested in the founder. Let him talk.
Yes.
So has happened to the best of us. Yeah, all of us. A lot of wisdom there. I can see why founders should be partnering with you. I think you're gonna push them to the right direction. They have their vision. They're bringing a lot to the table. You're also building all your experience and wisdom to the table. And what I heard is practicality. Get to revenue. Be in control of your own destiny for the companies that you're backing, right? So I think they're going to have a very pragmatic, experienced partner at the table that's going to push them longer and harder to go further to succeed, right? So, great job. Can you give us some examples? Have you invested? Have you activated the fund? Have you?
Yeah. So
Give us a few examples of early investments. If
yeah.
they're in stealth, you don't need to tell us the name.
No. So I'll tell you, a couple of companies. So first, I was an early investor, Series A co-lead of a company that just got bought for $1 billion by Mitsubishi Electric in industrial cybersecurity.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That entire field got created with Stuxnet, which was U.S. and Israel creating ways to disrupt the nuclear ambitions of Iran, and we did that using cyber invasion and whatnot, and that led to others saying, "Oh my God, we can do that too." So utilities in Europe got under threat, and manufacturing plants, and all kinds of stuff. So this company was built. There was a series of companies that got started 8 to 10 years ago, and they're all reached a certain level of maturity. The most important thing you do there is, understand anomalies in, who's on your network. So who's even in those industrial networks operating, what machines are there. So discovering them and understanding them and knowing that you have a Windows NT machine that hasn't been security updated for 10 years and has a real vulnerability, right? You don't need, if that machine is found on your network, that's a hole through which trucks can go through. So before you go to very sophisticated cybersecurity regimens. So that's what that company did. But now I've invested in another company that's formation stage, just getting started. Two incredible engineers that came out of the kinds of companies that represent software companies in Silicon Valley. And they're saying the same thing is now happening, but it's also happening even in air-gapped environments. Think of aerospace, defense, and others, where you really don't have much systems on the network. You have an F-35, but you also have, a manufacturing facility that's building drones for the U.S. military, or armaments, or building the next-gen satellites or buses for satellite communications. And now you have to take the technology further, which is not only anomalies in the system and the operating conditions, but also looking at, the code that's going in is AI-generated code, the system, policies that you're implementing, the configuration files that you're uploading, and you have to go much deeper into the meat of the situations and look for cybersecurity loopholes and shut them. So that's what this company is building, and an early stage company. And AI is very important. The industries are in the physical world. This is an example of a company which is an execution machine. There's no vision needed. You're not saying the world does. Everybody knows this is a problem, but nobody knew how to solve that problem, or they were using old school technologies to do that. So that's what this is doing. And a second company in stealth, which is, both these companies are in stealth, but the second company is effectively saying that we are very quickly moving from an Uber system where you had a driver, and remember, you used to comment on the driver and have conversations with the driver, where you from, what do you do, and all those nice things, to now the cars are all electric. I don't know if you've noticed, a lot of Ubers are Teslas, and so you have to optimize for that. The driver doesn't need to just figure out, maybe I should hang around the airport or this kind of clubbing scene after 2 a.m. so I can pick up people who are drunk and will give me high tips, or whatever, right? Or maybe not, because they're obnoxious. Now you also have to optimize for, when should I charge my car? When should I clean my car? What do I do? And towards autonomous systems, you go on Uber in Austin, you can call a Waymo, right? Where there's no driver, nothing. So how do you create optimization of these kinds of vehicles on ride-sharing networks? And what is the sort of stuff that you need to do to turn that into fleets and turn that into managed fleets? And so very interesting work happening in ride sharing. So I've invested in that as well. A company I invested in a few years ago that I also invested in with Red Glass, but it's an exception. This is a company I invested in at 5 million post 3.5 years ago. That unheard of, right? But it was a real partnership between me and the founder, and long story how we did that, and the structure to it, and it was very interesting. Another day and all that, but it was really a partnership to say, let's go build this. This is important. And it was a data aggregation, analysis, and visualization, and tools for data coming out of hardware testing. Defense applications, military applications, industrial applications, manufacturing applications, and so on. That company is growing, building products to allow you, when a car used to get built every 6-7 years. Now we do a car every, 3 years, a new version. Spaceships used to go up. NASA rockets would go up every year or 2 years, right? Now we have a rocket going up every day, right? And new satellites and new communication things. And, people are building now data centers in space and all kinds of stuff. That hardware iteration cycle has sped up. So this company is providing technologies for that. That company now just raised money 3.5 years later at like a 500 million post, led by Sequoia and Lightspeed and General Catalyst and Founders Fund and Lux. It's like a, like a consensus round now. But as an example of partnering up with,
What's the name of the company?
it's called Nominal.
Sorry. Oh, this is Nominal. Yes.
And this is an example of, I use that as an example to say founders at the early stages, they should be looking for, whether they come to me or not, it doesn't matter, but you should be looking for investors who will become real partners to them, who will help them understand all of those aspects. In this case, we had to think about product, we had to think about team, we had to think about, early customers, small, large, how do you go about that? And we had to think about the capital fundraising strategy, right? Capital formation strategy. And in their case, so far, it just sort of worked. Like, the things we did that were strategically done, it wasn't like a random bite happen chance. They actually work together. And it's a good example for people to look at to say how VCs can actually add value. It's not a thumping on my back because they're an incredible team, but they're an incredible team because they knew that they had to hire the world's best. It's like the first 10 employees of Stripe were all ex-founders. It's the same kind of a thing here, right? So that, helping founders see through that is what it takes. When these companies become successful, if not only do you make a lot of money because you were there early, like, that investment sits at like 90x or whatever it is, but more importantly, it also gives you a sense of satisfaction that you actually played a role. You weren't just here's a check and take my money because my building is more beautiful than anybody else's, but this is actually, me leaning in my case, 16 years of venture experience and 5 years of building a company experience and all the networks I've built to say, let's use that in your service to improve the odds of you winning. The odds are low, but if I can improve them by a little bit, it's a massive improvement.
A true partner to the founders with a lot of experience will be building right alongside the founders, right? So will you do hardware? The 3 examples you gave me were software examples. So will you invest in hardware?
I will invest in hardware, but the way to think about hardware is that there is no hardware without software today, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to invest in hardware that's either software inspired or software enabled. So, if somebody comes to me and says, I'm just building a battery and I need to build these kind of anodes or cathodes or whatever, that's not the right fit for me. I want to see where AI intersects with the physical world. So if you have, solution, there's a lot of companies now, but AI-enabled materials discovery companies, that would be an interesting place. And, human knowledge aggregation and using that to build the next generation hardware, 3D printing or 3D design, generative. We build everything that we have. This cup looks a certain shape and size because somebody who's designed this started with a flat sheet of paper and said, let me put a cylinder. It's easy to do. Let me put an attachment to it. Easy to do. So it all has a shape. But this is not an ergonomic fit. I've yet to find a cup where my fingers exactly fit right. And, and we've been baking cups for millennia, like for entire life. And we still can't figure out the ergonomic fit to it. And the reasoning is that we're using Cartesian coordinates to be able to do this. Maybe if we built it using AI to say, what does human ergonomics really feel like? This thing will not look like this. This may be 3D printed in real time to fit my hand just perfect because I want to have 3 fingers in here, not 2, and I can't fit 3 fingers in here, right? That, if you start thinking product solutions that way, starts to look very interesting. Absolutely will invest in that. And, and we really do need hardware because at the end of the day, we don't just sell bits and bytes to each other, right? Like we need things to actually do things for us. Right? A car still has to drive us from point A to point B. Maybe one day we'll get teleported. But in which case there will be radiations that will be all around us. They'll be teleporting us, right? Ionizing our existence. But even then we need hardware, but it needs to be intelligent hardware. It needs to be hardware done in a way that fits the venture model. Like doing hardware for the sake of hardware is not venture.
Well, I think the founders listening to this show will get to know you at a deeper level and they should be partnering with you. We should also mention that we are recording this on a Sunday. This is Sunday morning for you. And you told me you have a full day ahead with your portfolio company. So you are an investor that'll be right by their side, working alongside them, pushing them to achieve their goals. Just love it. Thank you for doing this for me today, taking time out on a busy Sunday morning. Thank you, Bilal. This has been just fantastic. I've learned so much just listening to you today. Congratulations on launching and closing your first fund. And Wishing you many, many, many more funds ahead of you and lots and lots of successes with your portfolio companies. Thank you, Bilal.
Thank you so much. So good to talk to you.